When you think about super successful businesses that are selling through the roof, like Heinz or Mattel, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and brilliant marketing. But there's a secret. The business behind the business, making selling simple for them and buying simple for their customers. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout as Heinz and Mattel. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/promo, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/promo to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/promo.
It's November 6th, 1796, and another remarkable event is about to be uncovered by Arion, Rebecca, and Olly, the Retrospectors.
If you ask the internet, you might well come to believe that the death of Catherine the Great today in history in 1796 had something to do with a prized stallion, a harness, and some ill-advised interspecies intimacy. That is, I'm afraid, just a misogynistic myth. The truth is, she actually died having a stroke on the toilet. She did an Elvis.
Yeah, so the popular myth has it that it was a collapsing toilet seat, if you're willing to look past the whole business of her having sex with a horse.
Oh, how could you be so ungainly as to say it like that? I was being so delicate.
They tiptoed around it so subtly.
If you put to one side the fact she was a horse shagger, then, yeah, the popular myth is that the toilet seat collapsed, but I wouldn't be so impolite as to say so.
No, not at all. And so, yeah, so you have these layers upon layers of potential misogyny that you can base your idea of her death upon. All of these, as you say, Ollie, are just absurd rumours, but at least the collapsing toilet thing is a little bit closer to the truth than the shagging stallion business, because the reality is that Catherine the Great did die of a stroke, as you say, and she was discovered collapsed on the floor of her washroom. She fell into a coma and died the next day, this day, while lying in her bed, and the cause of death was then confirmed by autopsy not to have anything to do with a horse. And so the reason that you have this really is that her male adversaries throughout the entire era of her reign had come up with the myths that continue to echo across the internet today. And the rumours really do reveal more about the era, you would have to say, in which Catherine lived rather than her death itself.
And men's inability to believe that a woman could rule. Cue Rebecca, let's relax for 8 minutes.
What do you want? Do you want the regardless she was born in? I've got the bio here. We
go on then.
The journey.
Tell us the journey.
Where did Catherine come from? She began life as Sophie, a Prussian princess. She was not especially prestigious family-wise, but a good marriage could change all of that. Her mother, Joanna, basically groomed her from birth to maximise her marriage potential. And she first met her future husband, Peter, later to be Peter, Tsar of Russia, when she was 10 and he was 11. And she loathed him from the beginning. In her surprisingly candid memoirs, she depicts him as a drunken, violent half-wit. She hated him. But both Peter and Sophie's fortunes changed when Peter's aunt Elizabeth unexpectedly became the Empress of Russia through a kind of complicated route that we covered back in 2021 in Elizabeth of Russia's bloodless coup. She was unmarried and childless, so she sent for her orphaned nephew Peter to become her heir and set about preparing him for rule and look for a suitable wife. He was 14 by this point. Elizabeth had once been engaged to a German prince who died before they could be married. Well, his sister was Joanna, Sophie's mother, and so there was this family connection and this soft spot. And so because of this, and because of Joanna's kind of stage mother posturing, Sophia got the gig. She agreed to convert to Russian Orthodoxy, take the new name of Catherine, and she arrived in St. Petersburg at the age of 16 to be married to 17-year-old Peter. As we've mentioned, she did not think much of him. She hated him. She also implied in her memoirs that their son Paul was actually the son of her lover. And you've heard of couples having separate bedrooms. These guys hated each other so much they had separate palaces.
Yes, although many historians believe these days that Catherine's claims that Peter wasn't the father of her son Paul was just an attempt to discredit him and to make people think that maybe he was infertile, but that actually he probably was Paul's father. But the point was she had many other illegitimate children during their marriage. If that was his heir, that one took 8 years to come about. And in the intermittent period, she had numerous affairs, firstly with Sergei Soltyakov, a Russian military officer, which she said, again in those memoirs, was kind of tacitly endorsed by the Empress Elizabeth. She knew that it was happening. She permitted the extramarital relationship. It didn't matter so long as the bloodline appeared to continue.
Yeah, exactly. But then, in January of 1762, Elizabeth died, and her nephew Peter III then ascended to the throne with Catherine as his consort. Peter quickly ended Russia's war with Prussia, which angered the military, the Russian military, and he started introducing these liberal reforms, which really just continued to alienate the lower nobility. And immediately, this discontent and all of the factions that hated Peter started to rally around Catherine. And then this plot was discovered to overthrow him in July, and Catherine acted swiftly, basically going, well, if we're plotting against him, then I'm going to be involved in it. She gained military support for her own cause, and so she arranged for Peter's arrest, and then on the 9th of July, Peter abdicated, and Catherine became ruler. But Peter then ended up dying just days later, possibly murdered by Alexei Orlov, who was the brother of Catherine's lover at the time. And that cast a shadow over her rule from the very start, because I think that people were happy to see Peter go, but they didn't massively like the idea that he was going to be murdered immediately after he stood down.
Yeah, sounds a bit suspicious.
Yeah.
But after that, it didn't take long for Catherine to become quite popular. I mean, it wasn't hard to outdo Peter's popularity. You know, he always identified as a Prussian. That was his background. He barely spoke Russian. He always made it pretty clear that when Russia and Prussia, as they often were as major rivals, were up against each other, his sympathies were always going to be with Prussia. As you can imagine, not very popular sentiment in Russia. Catherine, on the other hand, threw herself wholeheartedly into becoming Russian. She was fluent in the language, although she did make kind of cute little spelling mistakes that would become associated with her. But, you know, she loved her adopted country. But she also saw that it did seem in some respects very backwards compared to its Western European rivals. And she sought to change that. And that is where a lot of the focus on her legacy now is more kind of on this softer, nicer side. Well, that wasn't all there was to her, but she was certainly a champion of Enlightenment ideals and bringing in modernizing reforms in education, agriculture, the military, etc., all designed to put Russia on a firmer, more equal standing with European powers.
But actually, a lot of the stuff wasn't intellectual expansion. It was literally geographic expansion to include strategic economic seaports. Crimea came into Russia under her reign, Belarus, Lithuania. I'm certainly not sowing any problems for the future there.
Yeah, that is partly what caused all of these horrendous rumours to start spreading, not just within Russia, but internationally, because like the foreign press, through degrading cartoons and exaggerated stories about her promiscuity, tried to do her successes as a leader down, because she had this growing threat to other nations and they could see it. And her, like not only her military victories, but also her modernization efforts just increased fears across Europe about the rise of Russia, making her a really obvious target for criticism. But closer to home, too, her success led to jealousy and kind of fear, generally, about how she was running the Russian court. And particularly her male rivals disliked the fact that she wielded power over them, as few other women in the world at that time could have claimed. And that was a massive threat to lots of men in Russia.
Yeah, I mean, she was a goer, I'm going to put it out there, but she had 22 identified lovers in her lifetime, which I think for a male ruler would be seen as pretty chaste. But It wasn't just the fact that she had these lovers. It was the fact also that she never remarried. It sounds weird to say that she was widowed when she almost certainly ordered her husband's execution. But she didn't get married again. And so it enabled her enemies at home and abroad to paint her as this sort of unnatural female libertine, you know, who was living this lifestyle that was completely alien of everything that was expected of a woman.
I mean, it reminds me a bit of when we talked about Wu Zitan a few weeks ago, you know, China's only empress. Men want to present her as a nymphomaniac as a way of undermining her, and yet her sexual appetite was probably no more than any of her male counterparts in history. But at the same time, to get to that position and to be able to consolidate, then she did use the assets that she had, which was being able to manipulate men, many of whom secured prominent jobs, because that's how she made sure she had allies. You know, she was in a sexist society where people wanted to deal with men about matters of state, so she might as well have the ones that she trusted, and those were the ones she was sleeping with. The most famous being Grigory Potemkin, But, there were loads. Father to one of her children, Stanislaw Poniatowski, even achieved her backing to become king of Poland. I was sort of friends with benefits situation. But, that doesn't mean that that's any different to what men in the same situation would have found themselves doing.
Yeah, and actually also when Poniatowski began reforms that were aimed at increasing Poland's independence, do you know what? She wasn't so nice to him anymore. And Catherine eventually forced him to abdicate, with Russia eventually playing a leading role in the dissolution of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. So, there was friends with benefits, but there were huge risks to getting close to Catherine as well. At the same time, she did give out these extravagant gifts. One of the biggest that I enjoyed was that she gave one of her former lovers...
She gave you a gift? How did she commit that to you? In 325 years' time in Australia, a man will be born who will receive this wonderful gift.
Well, the thing that I didn't get was the thing that she gave to one lover who got 1,000 serfs. I thought that's a nice present. That would be a good one to have.
It's really lots of gifts, isn't it?
After you've unwrapped the 899th, you're like, ugh, another serf, great.
Tomorrow.
His unsparing caricatures of the new president created a new image for him as this biting political wit to be feared.
Ditch the ads and get a Sunday episode when you join Club Retrospectors. Patreon.com/Retrospectors.